I'm Amber Rivas, and I beat the often path by becoming a leader in the nonprofit sector in Los Angeles County, where we're making a difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of young people, children, youth, and families across the county.
Amber Rivas is the president and CEO of Aviva Family and Children Services in Los Angeles, a nonprofit that has existed for over 100 years. She's dedicated her entire life to solving the complex housing issues facing major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles. Amber has worked for nonprofits her entire career, helping women, children, and local communities with mental health and crisis intervention, foster care, and so much more. Now, she's engaged with the most vulnerable parts of society, tackling issues head-on that most of us choose to ignore. Today, we'll learn how her selfless journey has brought her satisfaction, joy, and a connection to her community in ways that are so powerful. She's proof that while judgment is easy, doing something about it is far more rewarding and noble. So here's Amber Rivas, I'm Ross Palmer, and this is Beat the Often Path. Well, welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me, Ross.
I know that there's a question that I have and that other people who are listening to this are going to want to know, and this is we're going to start out on a serious note here.
Okay.
When are you going to get serious with your life and career and do something meaningful for once?
I feel like I'm still on the runway, you know?
I mean, isn't it time? Isn't it time?
Not yet, not.
Okay.
I got a few more years of fun left in me, I think.
Yeah, you're just playing around. Nothing serious about what you do, and it's not like you're committed to any of these ideals.
No, not really at all.
Coming up on a couple decades, so yeah, I can sense that. I feel that foundering energy. All right, so you're coming to us from Hollywood, where I used to live. You're slightly more on the west side. I was slightly more on the east side. We were just talking before we began filming about what an interesting place Hollywood is in general. For those who don't know, who have not lived there, it's probably not quite what you might expect it to be. In many good and not so good ways. So first, where do we jump into your story? I mean, you have been doing this for quite a while. You've recently taken on a new position at the organization of Aviva. So let's get an overview. Where do you think we should begin here?
Oh gosh. I mean, so in December of 1983, I came, running into the world. No, but seriously, I joined this fantastic organization, Aviva Family and Children Services, back in January of this year. Yeah. I've been saying for the past 9 months that I'm new. I'm not sure how much longer I can say that, but this organization is not new. Aviva has been around for 108 years. And I can get a little bit into Aviva's story in a bit, but prior to coming over to Aviva, I spent 17 years at St. Anne's Family Services, also located in Los Angeles. And I actually started there right out of college. In fact, I interviewed during my finals week and started a week after. And I think that's really where I found my footing and my passion for the work that we do in support of the most vulnerable and disenfranchised in Los Angeles County. I started off as a childcare worker in the group home over at St. Anne's. And so I was working directly with the teens in the group home and, taking them to school and taking them to their medical appointments and sitting with them. And just hearing their stories, and it really opened my eyes to the need of this community and the importance of intervening early, the importance of really starting when kids are young, and there's so much opportunity for us to support them and help them find their way and really stay hopeful. So I think that, the 17 years that I spent in that organization, I was, of course, able to kind of ascend through the ranks and continue to find my passion in not just serving the community, but also supporting team members, building teams, helping others find their way, find their passion so that they can do that really important work with the families and the kiddos that we serve.
Well, I think I speak for everybody who lives in a different part of the country. What do we know about people from California? They're all scam artists, they're all shysters, they're all sleazy, they're all up to something. So how are you ruining America? Exactly. In what way, specifically?
Maybe I don't recycle enough.
Yes. Because I
They
know
might use a little bit too much
intuitively,
water.
I know that you're up to no good. So I'm gonna tease it out in the rest of this interview. And so
Okay.
just we're on to you. Okay, so there are many issues, obviously, and you've become intimately familiar. So what are the issues? I guess we can get a little bit into Aviva, the organization,
Sure.
perhaps. What have they been doing, and what are some of the issues that they're solving today?
Oh my goodness. So this organization, like I said, has been around for 108 years. It was actually originally founded as the Hamburger Home by the Hamburger family. The Hamburger family owned the largest department store in Los Angeles over 100 years ago.
I'm gonna
Um,
try not to make a joke about this. I'm just gonna let this ride. So fine, the hamburger family.
just
Yes.
sit back, buckle up. Okay,
Moving on. Moving on.
Ron.
Yeah.
So, and this incredible family actually started this organization to provide residential services to single Jewish women in Los Angeles. Single Jewish women that were just looking to get back on their feet. So we provided residential services and also services to help them kind of figure out what kind of career choices they wanted to make in life. Over the years, we were able to acquire this beautiful facility located right on Hollywood Boulevard, just a couple of blocks that way. It's our famous pink home, and that is where our residential services eventually transitioned to group home care for teenage girls in the foster care system and juvenile justice system. From there, our services just continue to grow and expand. We now offer mental health services countywide, all throughout Los Angeles County, including intensive mental health services. We also have a foster family agency. We provide FFA services where we recruit, train, and certify resource parents, formerly known as foster families, to take in young people that are in the foster care system. And then, of course, we continue to offer housing services. We've converted our Big Pink home into an interim supportive housing program for homeless women and their children. We can serve up to 36 families every single night. We provide them with 3 nutritious meals a day, 365 days a year. We provide them with mental health services, workforce development services, enrichment activities, arts and crafts, yoga, dance, resume building, interviewing skills, case management, and we provide the full gamut of support to these women that are coming to us. Many of them directly from the streets. So when you ask about what is Aviva doing in Hollywood, what are we doing in our community? When you think about Hollywood, you think about entertainment, right? You think about movies, you think about film, you think about actors and actresses. When you come to Hollywood, you can't help but notice that there is a pervasive issue with the unhoused population. It really is countywide, but
Yeah.
specifically in Hollywood, there certainly has been an increase, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. So Aviva is playing a critical role in that. We are up close and personal, and have pivoted and evolved our services to address the immediate needs that are in this community.
Yeah. Well, I experienced that firsthand because, like I was saying, I live in East Hollywood, and you noticed that it was very symbolic. Before the pandemic, a lot of new shops were coming in my neighborhood, and I lived in a very interesting neighborhood that has a lot of history. And was it going up or was it going down? It wasn't so easy to tell which direction it was heading. But new stores were coming in, a bakery was coming in, there was a gym, all of this stuff. Pandemic happened, all of that got shut down.
Yep.
Then suddenly all these buildings that were going to become really nice parts of the community were vacant. And there was always a small homeless, or sorry, unhoused, I should say, let me get my language right, encampment very near to me.
Yes.
But I watched the way that that grew and the way that that dynamic completely changed in the year and 2 years that followed from the beginning of the pandemic. And so
Right.
it is true that you really can't live in or near the Hollywood area or in LA County without being aware that, yes, there is a massive issue
That's
here.
right.
And I think some people are aware of that issue, but of course, people have very, very, very different beliefs as to how to solve the issue like that. I know
Yeah.
where I stand. I'm pretty sure I know where you stand on this.
Yeah.
But what do you think the answer is in general terms to
You know, I
alleviating
don't
this?
I don't think that there's a magic bullet, right? I think that the solution to the problem is collaboration. It's partnering with different organizations and officials that are doing something very specific in terms of addressing the issue. And it's also around prevention, right? Like, how do we ensure that we build an infrastructure that can prevent young people, that can prevent families from ending up on the streets. And so I think it really is a collaborative issue. It's a collaborative answer, and it's really meeting each and every individual and family exactly where they're at. Sometimes they just need, you know, a partner. They just need someone to talk to. They just need someone to process, what's going on for them. And so it's, again, it's not a one answer, a one word answer. It's something where we all have to kind of take a step back and go, okay, how can we work together to solve this problem? It's making sure that we have robust substance use disorder services available that aren't, super difficult to access. The red tape around accessing some of the services that are out there can be really problematic and create a massive barrier for many of our young people and our families to get the services and the help that they need. Sometimes it's just, I need some reprieve. I need a couple of weeks. I don't need something long term. I need just a couple of weeks to get on my feet and figure things out. And some do need more long term support. So again, we have to create a spectrum of services and a spectrum of support that no matter where you are, there's something for you and it's easy to access. So how can we get access out there? And a lot of that has to do with outreach. Not everyone has access to the internet like you and I, Ross, right? So sometimes it means we got to pound the pavement and walk the streets and get to know folks and build those relationships. And in addition to collaboration, I will also say the ability to form connection with one another. I think that's incredibly important. In the 18 years that I've been in this business, the one thing that I've taken away from it is the importance of the ability to connect with one another. We are all seeking community. We are all seeking a sense of belonging. And I think that's one of the reasons why the pandemic was so incredibly difficult for us, right? We were all missing that community. We were missing each other. It's great that now, one of the bright spots, the silver lining, is that now we can connect virtually. We don't necessarily have to be in the same town or same city or even the same state or country. We can connect with one another virtually, but that's not the same thing as being in person and shaking someone's hand and giving a hug and looking someone in the eye and telling them that I care about you, right? So
No.
creating an opportunity for community is just so incredibly important.
Well, I personally believe, if you've heard the saying that your net worth is determined by the 5 closest people to you. So I take that to the extreme. I literally only form community with people who can help me in a monetary sense. So I only ever look upwards. I refuse to associate with anybody who can't immediately financially benefit me, because that's what Instagram has told me I need to do.
Right.
I need to look
What's the
upwards.
ROI on this friendship?
Yes. What is the ROI? So the other thing is, okay, community, sure, all well and good, but how am I going to cast aside an entire group of people if I think of them as human beings? Because it's much, much easier if I just don't, right?
Of course.
It's
Of course.
simpler. But, one of those things these days, I don't know, we talked about the internet. You're on social media, but obviously people there's this disturbing trend. And California is looked at in a very negative way by a lot of people, obviously. And also San Francisco and the break-ins, and people
Right.
are sharing these videos,
Right.
getting really popular. Oh, they've decriminalized crime and people are stealing 900. It's free. There's this really pernicious rhetoric that's going around about California, and borderline, it's a failed state. And look at look at how bad these policies are. And this is an example of what we don't want. Why do you feel that these problems exist in cities such as Los Angeles, San Francisco? What do you think the reason that we're here and dealing with this is? And do you think that people have gotten that reason wrong elsewhere?
That is such a loaded question, Ross. And I think the answer, as with the last question, is rather complex. I think that lawmakers and advocates see that so many folks that have ended up in the juvenile justice system, in the probation system, that have had contact with law enforcement, they're just folks that are trying to survive. They're just trying to get by. Folks that are, that end up spending, weeks, months, years in jail because they were just trying to make ends meet for their family. So I think that the intention is to create an infrastructure, to create laws that don't permanently penalize and inflict permanent harm on these individuals and families where they can never recover, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I think that what we have also seen is the ability to evolve, right? We've implemented, like, let's try something new. Let's take a look and see if we loosen things up and make it less impactful on the trajectory of an individual's life, that they're able to kind of recover and create a thriving lifestyle for themselves where they can really survive, not just survive, but thrive. And, I think it's what they say, the pendulum, right? The pendulum swings all the way to the right. And then when we shift things up, it swings all the way to the left. And so I imagine what we're going to see, Ross, is some recalibrating. Okay, so we tried this and now it's gotten us here. Let's recalibrate and see if we can kind of shift things up. But I think that the perception is that, California is just, we love crime. And
Yeah, we love it.
we love crime,
We
and
enjoy it, and
there
we're
should be no
completely blind.
consequences,
Yes,
right? There should be
right.
no
Yes.
consequences for our actions. And that's simply not the case. It's not about not wanting consequences or to create a society where we're just riddled with crime and poverty. It's actually quite the opposite, right? It's quite the opposite. We want to make sure that everyone has a sense of self-worth, a sense of well-being, and that one mistake does not define you, right? One mistake does not define you, that you have the ability to make something of yourself, even if you might have, made an error once or twice in your life. That does not define you as a human being. And I think also is that the research also shows that spending time in prison and in jail does not necessarily do us a whole lot of good either, right? So what is the answer? I guess I would ask those that are not living in California, how is that working out as well, right? I don't think there's anyone that necessarily has it
Punish them,
right.
throw them all in jail. Yeah, I mean, it's usually some kind of draconian military tactic that I think is proposed, right? Just
Right,
be more tough on crime. But of course, and this is the way we frame these discussions matters, I think, because
right,
on an individual level, pretty much anywhere in the country, especially in a high cost of living area, people are aware of these terms: high COL, low COL area, high cost of living. People are aware that themselves and maybe their partner, they're increasingly struggling to make ends meet. Even people who are very anti-California will acknowledge in another thread that things are expensive, daycare is expensive, housing prices are going up. When will my generation ever be able to afford a house?
right,
I can
right.
barely afford an apartment. I have 2, 3 jobs and I can barely get by.
That's
So
right.
very few people, from what I've seen, connect that things are difficult even for themselves with this
Right,
other issue. It's
right.
always, if I can get 2, 3 jobs and if I'm able to make it work despite the fact that I think that housing is primarily unfair, then
Sure.
literally every other person should as well. And if they don't, it's 100% their fault, not
Yes.
taking into account the circumstances in which somebody was born, the circumstances in which they were raised, whether they had any kind of financial support or parents available or any of these other things. And the thought that I personally have had, I'm a business owner, a small business owner. I think I've, had very many privileges growing up in my life, but the thought that I've had is I have had difficulty in getting clients. I have had difficulty in growing my business. I have
Sure.
no reason not to succeed. And if surviving in Los Angeles is hard for me, and if it's hard for my friends who also have an advantaged and privileged background, how hard must it be for somebody who doesn't have all of those advantages? And we could be talking about mental disabilities, physical disabilities, or
Right.
just having some kind of environmental disability, if we can call it that. So the idea that we're all 100% equal and that if I'm able to do it, so should literally every single other human being, and I'm going to look down on all of them, that's a way of framing this problem that I've always disagreed with.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. And, on that same thread, you're speaking about equity. And going back to the previous answer that I'd given you, why California is doing things the way that we're doing it here, right? I think it is to create a sense of equity, right? We understand that not everyone is coming from the same background, has the same leg up. I grew up in a suburban town in Orange County, and I was fortunate enough to recognize my privilege very, very early on. And I recognize my privilege. I understand how I'm showing up today. I have white skin, I have blonde hair. I understand my privilege, but even as a child, I understood my privilege. My grandmother lived in a rough town in East Los Angeles growing up. And so we would visit her fairly frequently. And it is very different. It was very different there than it was in
Orange County.
Anaheim Hills, California.
Yeah, sure.
And my thought whenever we would visit is, wow, like why is there such a difference in the quality of essentially everything from the roads to the markets, the types of foods that were for sale in the market, what my grandmother had access to. So I think that having that exposure to different walks of life, different communities that have different levels of access and resources very early on helped me recognize my own privilege. And essentially, I think that somewhat has led me into the field that I'm in today. So I think going back to exposure, but also connection, right? It's easy to disregard and dismiss an entire population if you have no connection to them, right?
Yes.
So for me, we had this beautiful event yesterday where we had one of our former clients who actually happened to also be named Amber tell her story. And she had come to our housing program. She was homeless, she was pregnant, and she had no support. She didn't have a single adult in her life that could provide her with the support and resources that she needed. And her story of trials and tribulation and barrier after barrier, and she soldiered on. She persisted and she prevailed. And just seeing everyone's reaction to that story, it was one person, it was one story, but that connection brought it all home, right? It's like, okay, this is why we need to support organizations like Aviva. This is why we need to spend time hearing these kinds of stories, because it reminds us, or sometimes just pulls the curtain back. So I know that these are the kinds of things that are actually happening right here in my own community, and I can actually be a part of the solution. I can help.
Yeah. Well, that's such a wonderful thought. And talking about Instagram platitudes, something that I've also, it's the nuance of these things, because a lot of people say practice gratitude, from Goop to Gwyneth Paltrow. People say gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And I think that's true. We should definitely be much more grateful for what we have. There's nothing wrong with that, especially considering the context of ourselves within an 8 billion person social structure across the globe. Gratitude, absolutely. But gratitude on its own sort of absolves you of any responsibilities. I am grateful. Boy, I'm so grateful. Gosh, aren't I grateful? I'm so lucky, aren't I? End of discussion. I'm just grateful. Is that the end, though? Or is part of truly recognizing your gratitude recognizing that you have advantages? And is it not the human thing to do to say, given that I'm in a position to give back, should I? And what might that look like?
I gotta say, I'm a big believer in practicing gratitude. Just sometimes when you're having those tough moments, might be in a dark space. Practicing gratitude, while it might be difficult in that moment, I do believe that that's a really wonderful strategy for all of us, no matter where we are. Right? We might just be having a tough day, or we might be in the middle of a crisis, and taking even 30 seconds to go, okay, I'm really grateful for this right now. I'm really grateful that all my bills are paid, or I'm really grateful that I woke up this morning, or I'm really grateful that I was able to go for a walk in my community. So I do think that gratitude is really important. I also think it's important that we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And that could look different for everybody. It might be, belonging to a community where you're able to get together on a weekly basis and just kind of support one another in conversation, and to connect. But I think that giving back and being charitable, sometimes just with your time, can be so incredibly meaningful. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, is just how fulfilling and powerful it can be to lend a helping hand, even if it's just donating, some of your used goods, right? That it can feel really good inside, right? But so I'm not going to knock Goop. I think that practicing gratitude,
She's a
I can get
sponsor.
behind it.
Oh no.
I can get behind Gwyneth. I think
Yes.
practicing gratitude
No,
is actually a
it
really,
comes from a good place. Yeah, I
it
believe
does,
that it
it
comes from a
does.
good place. So yes, I'm not trying to malign. Um, but yeah, I think that's all very true. And human connection, that's something that I've come to believe in my own life, that human connection really is the greatest single thing. And that's why I do stuff like this. Just connecting with human, that is the best part of
It
this
is.
experience, in my
It is.
opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important that all of us seek out more meaningful human connections, whatever that may mean. Because I completely agree that for a while we had none of it, and we saw how lonely and bad that was. And now we still, in some ways, we live in a digital desert sometimes with remote work, and we still miss some of that. But I think we've all seen how important human connection is, and genuinely connecting with people to our happiness and well-being. So you mentioned that you at an early age, so you had maybe NIMBY from Anaheim Hills to IMGB to in my grandma's backyard in East Los Angeles, and you saw that difference. So you obviously committed yourself in a career point of view to these ideals from a very young age. So what made you decide to start getting actively involved in solving some of these issues, and what was the first step that you took?
That's a really interesting question. I've really paused and reflected on this over the years. How did I get here? And it
Mm.
wasn't just recognizing my privilege or seeing the disparities between different communities, just even 50 miles away. Um, for me, so I was an athlete my entire life.
Wow.
I started very young and became a very competitive athlete. I played volleyball in
Okay.
high school, and that was a huge part of my life. I think that if you were to ask anyone in my immediate circle to describe me in one word, I think 90% of them would use the word competitive, and I'm
Okay.
okay with that. I'm okay with that. So, I played competitive sports in my youth. And, as I was getting ready to graduate my senior year in high school, I had an unfortunate situation with my high school varsity team, that led me to really pause and reflect and ask myself, how did this happen? Um, I ended up kind of giving up sports for many years after that, which was the antithesis of who I thought I was as a person. It was such a huge part of my identity, and it made me actually curious. I wanted to understand what happened. So I decided to pursue, the study of psychology in college, and that I didn't think that was going to be my path as a child. I wanted to be a heart doctor. I want to be a cardiologist. So it was a completely different trajectory for me. And in my studies, I felt so connected to it. And I did some volunteer work with a young boy who had autism, and, even though I was working with just one person, the opportunity to give back and to see progress and to connect with this young boy, all with the purpose of his growth, it changed me. It was a pivotal moment for me. And so that's essentially kind of how I made the decision. All right, this is what I want to do. I want to find a way to give back. I want to find a way to connect with people and make sure that everyone has the same opportunities that I have been given. So, that's how I ended up at St. Anne's, working in the group home. I didn't even know what group homes were. When I started there, I was like, oh, okay, this sounds really interesting. They're obviously in the foster care system. I knew that the foster care system existed, but I really had, in my early 20s, I had no idea the depth and the complexity of the foster care, the child welfare system, especially in Los Angeles County. So my path has been kind of fascinating. It started with, sports and competition and, being a part of a team and trying to figure out, how did I get here? I spent, my entire life working towards this goal, and now it's not something that I see myself doing anymore. How did this happen, and how did it happen so abruptly? So in my journey to understand it, that's where I found the connection, and I found the purpose that has led me to where I am today.
That's what an amazing story. I love that. Um, do you feel that sense of purpose on a daily basis? We just talked about gratitude and getting through times when times are not so great. Do you feel that having a mission versus a job has materially changed your life? Does it help you get through the tough times easier?
100%. 100%. I feel a sense of purpose each and every day. And don't get me wrong, Russ, there are days that I struggle. There are days that I'm very, very challenged. Just the sense of responsibility that I put sometimes on myself.
Mm,
But knowing that I'm part of something bigger, and that my why is these kids, it's these families, it's seeing them and knowing that even in my role, I'm not working directly with them, but even in my role, I can play a small part in them, creating a safe and thriving world for themselves and their children. That it's so meaningful to me. And it's interesting that you asked that question, because I have friends and family members that do very different work than me. In fact, most of them are in completely different industries than I am. They're accountants, they're attorneys, they're designers, they're artists. And they have their sense of purpose. They have their passion. But for me, it's like I'm not the kind of person that I can just clock in and clock out. When I'm here, and even when I'm not here, I am 100% invested in the outcomes of not just the people that we serve, but the people that are doing the work. Because at the end of the day, we can't be doing this work without our incredible teams, without our incredible staff members. They show up each and every day to provide therapy, to provide crisis management, to support these families in their homes. And that's such important work. That's the core of what we do. I think having a
amazing.
sense of purpose it's so important. And especially, through the pandemic, as all of us were just, what is happening? Like, there is not one person that I know that was like, okay, this is good. I see where this is going, and, it's all going
Everything's
to be fine.
fine.
No, it was
Yeah.
like, what is going on? There was so much uncertainty. There were so many question marks. And, obviously, so much information that's being thrown at us at a daily basis, that there was just this sense of internal panic. And carrying that for an extended period of time can do a lot of damage, and really make you question, you know, what am I doing, and is this worth it? For me, the pandemic was an incredibly difficult period of time career-wise, because not only was I responsible for my own family and keeping my children safe and keeping myself safe and concerned about my parents and grandparents and how they're doing and how we can make sure that they're safe and healthy. I felt this incredible sense of responsibility for our families, because at the end of the day, the pandemic, disproportionately impacted, families that are in impoverished communities, communities of color, and that's the communities that we serve. So while it was incredibly difficult for me, that's what kept me going back to work every day, because I had that sense of purpose. I had that mission.
Mm, what a beautiful thing. Yeah, I completely understand. Now that you've switched roles a little bit, now you're
Yeah.
CEO of a nonprofit. What is it like to be the CEO of a nonprofit? What's the day
Oh,
to day?
the day to day. I mean, every day is different. Today I'm with you, right?
Yeah, you're like, well, normally I do good things. Today is a wild deviation from what I'm supposed to be
No,
doing.
this is a
Normally my
great
work brings me joy.
this is a great bookmark to my week. And I will say that I really enjoy it. This organization, like I said, is doing it's doing critical work in our communities. So it's been for me, a relatively easy transition. It's easy to come to this organization and really fall in love with it. It's got such rich history and it's doing the work in this community. So that has been easy for me, because I've just moved to another mission driven organization that has a mission that is so near and dear to my heart, working with these families, working with mothers and their children. But it is different. I have the opportunity to meet with a lot of people each and every day who want to learn about Aviva, who are interested in supporting Aviva. So my role is really just helping them connect with us, learn more about us, and then supporting all of our teams. At my last organization, I was mainly over our programs and services, but now I have the opportunity to work closely with our financial department, to work with our quality improvement department, to work with our human resources department. So I'm in a seat where I get to see how all of the pieces fit together, and I get to be the person that kind of uh, creates that sense of direction. And that's a really
Yeah.
exciting place for me to be. And I'm also very grateful and fortunate to have a team that is really enthusiastic. They're so passionate and so hardworking, each and every one of them. And really, I'm only as good as my team, and so that's an exciting thing for me, is to be able to build my team and support them in each of their endeavors, and supporting each and every department that essentially supports the organization and supports our families.
So that's wonderful. We know that these things, and there have been many different discussions on what to do. Some people say bulldoze all of the golf courses, put up low income housing, etc. I personally love playing golf, so that one stings a bit. But if it has to happen, it has to happen. I'll accept it if we need to. Um,
I will say this, Ross. I do enjoy a round of golf every now and then. I'm not very
hey,
good, so
okay.
but I do
Especially
enjoy a
because the
round.
municipal courses in LA are amazing. They're incredible and they're not that expensive. Uh, but yeah, so we know that these things cost money. And like we talked about, we're not quite sure what the best way to handle these problems. Where should the money come from? So when it comes to an organization like Aviva, obviously you must incur significant expenses in running the house and supporting all of these families. So what is the financial structure that allows Aviva to operate? Is it donations? How is this happening?
That's a really good question. So, in total, about between 85 and 90% of our budget comes from government contracts. So, we have contracts with Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, with the Department of Children and Family Services. We also have a contract with an organization called People Assisting the Homeless, or PATH. That organization is what essentially funds our Wallace House Interim Supportive Housing Program. Um, Unfortunately, and this is the case with most government contracts, those funds do not cover the full cost of care. Certainly not the full cost of care based on the type of quality of service that we want to provide our families. So that is where our fundraising efforts come in. So about 10% of our budget comes from fundraising, from investments, from individual donors, from foundations. So a lot of my work also ties to that too. It's getting the word out so that we can make sure that we're getting the support that we need to fill that gap, so we can provide not just the bare minimum, not the basic services that our families need. They need more, and they deserve more, frankly. And that's really kind of where all of it kind of comes together. We spend a lot of time getting to know individual donors and hearing, what their interests are, and sharing with them our mission and getting them excited about what we do, because we're doing some really great stuff here in Hollywood.
That's undeniable. All right, on a personal note, are you optimistic about the future or pessimistic, and why?
I'm certainly optimistic. I am hopeful each and every day. I don't think any of us could be in this line of work if we didn't stay hopeful. I think that there are certainly challenges and barriers, but I've seen some remarkable things happen in my career with different organizations coming together to create change, and create efforts that essentially are helping to give our families a leg up, and to create a sense of equity, and to create a sense of community, and create a sense of value for each person that we're working in support of. So I stay as hopeful as I can. That's how I get out of bed every day. That's how I sleep at night. I don't think that I could be in this work if I had a sense of doom um, every single day. We're all hopeful. And I think part of that, Ross, honestly, is because I have seen tremendous, tremendous work. I have seen families that have overcome, you know, incredible circumstances that, it would be hard for you to believe, but they prevail. They're able to overcome because of their adversity. They're so strong, and it's inspirational each and every day. So that's what I stay close to. That is my why, is seeing that the work that we're doing matters. It is making a difference. So that's going back to hearing those stories. That's why I think it's so important, because it grounds us. It grounds us to the mission. It grounds us to the work. So I think that for me, I try to stay focused on my why, even when the going gets tough.
Well, all jokes aside, that is absolutely beautiful, and there is a reason you're on this show. It's not just a constant peppering of sarcasm. Uh, it's just like, geez, come on, give it a rest. It's beautiful. And I knew the moment that I learned about your organization that it was something that I wanted to feature. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to speak to you. If things go well in the next 5 or 10 years, what do you think the most realistic, best outcome from your point of view would be to 5 to 10 years of success?
For the organization or for the community at large?
I suppose either, however you interpret that.
For this organization, I think that if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, we will be able to extend our reach and to grow our programs and services to serve even more members of our community. I think that we'll play a part in breaking down barriers and enhancing access to care. And I think that that will be possible as long as we continue to build upon the partnerships that we have created here in Hollywood, working closely with Hollywood Forward, working closely with the Hollywood Food Coalition, Hollywood Partnership, continuing our partnership with the Department of Mental Health, and really being an advocate. But I think it's going to take work. It's going to take a lot of intentionality. We have to be really thoughtful and strategic with how we are addressing each area that we come up against. But I'm hopeful that we will see through our growth a decrease in the unhoused population. We're really focusing on women and families, and that is the most disproportionately affected community when it comes to the unhoused population. So I think continuing to focus on those areas that need additional supports, services, and supports. I think also continue to increase our efforts around substance use support, SUD, and again, it's all about increasing access to care. I think that's probably one of the largest barriers that we see. It's just really tough to access care, and there's so much red tape, right? So how can we make it easier for folks to get services? And on top of that, I think a lot of work has been done to address the stigma that has existed for many years around mental health disorders, going to therapy. I think that we've made a lot of progress there. I think even just 10, 15 years ago,
True.
it felt different to talk about going to
Yeah.
therapy or asking for help. So I think that we have to continue with that work. I don't think we're done yet, but just continuing to educate, everyone, and starting early, making sure there's better access to quality mental health support in schools, making sure that our teachers have the support they need to address those issues in the classroom. Because our teachers are really sometimes are the frontline support, right? They're the ones that are seeing some of the behaviors in the classrooms that are usually indicators of something much bigger, right? Something, like trauma in the home, or something else much more serious that might be going on. So making sure that we're supporting our teachers and giving them the supports and the resources so they can do their work, they continue to educate our young people, but also recognize when something is going on, and they can link those kids to the care that they actually need. So continuing to do work around education and just getting rid of that stigma. It's okay to ask for
Yeah.
help.
I love it. I love every single part of it. Just want to say, keep doing what you're doing. The world is a better place for having people like you in it, and also the organization. It's incredibly rare, but incredibly powerful to come across somebody who has committed themselves in the way that you have. And it's certainly a great reset for me personally, just to be reminded. Again, we talk about doom and gloom all the time. but to be reminded that there are really good people out there who have their hearts and minds in the right place. And clearly you are a shining example of that. And I look forward to you being able to achieve all of your goals and more in the next 5 to 10 years. So keep on rocking. If nothing else, this is just a little rah-rah, good job moment. If I could give you a trophy,
I'll take it.
here you go. Here's a trophy. I'll work
take it
on
into
that.
my next meeting.
When we get a budget eventually for this, I'll have a trophy that I can get out. It'll be years away. Maybe a little plastic something will arrive at your door. To wrap things up, is it ridiculous to ask if you could distill? Could you distill your life philosophy into 30 seconds? Is that possible? What would that be?
My life philosophy into 30 seconds. I think it's stay true to yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and drink lots of water.
That's good.
Yeah.
And if somebody with the last name of Hamburger ever offers to help you out, you take it. You take it. No jokes. No jokes. Just serious. Thank you again, Amber. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
And with that, the official podcast is over.